A new series here on the Hard Count. What win total would you be content with for your football program? Today, talking about the Texas A&M Aggies. Vegas has got the Aggies over-under win total preseason set to 8.5 wins. Last year, A&M went 7-5, 7-6 if you count the bowl game. The year before, they went 5-7. But Vegas says, no. We like the Aggies. We like them to be right around that 8-win range. So is that too rich for us? Do we feel good about that? Again, at a fan base level, what do we think that fan base would be content with? Make sure you're subscribed here. Texas A&M fans, I do not want to speak for you. This is us purely taking a pulse from what we can gather and what we think would be appropriate for your football team. But make sure you're subscribed right here. Let us know if you agree, if you disagree, and what you would like to see for your Texas A&M Aggies this upcoming season when it comes to that win-loss column. Obviously, the perfect world is we go undefeated, win the national championship, win the SEC, and vibes are high heading into year 2 of the Mike Elko era. I feel you on that. With that being said, we're going to do our best to take an accurate pulse of what we think that fan base would be content with, and feel free to correct us from there. As I mentioned, the win total in Vegas, over under 8.5 for Texas A&M preseason. What that tells me, from the outside looking in here, is Vegas is saying, all right now, we like the roster, and we like the home games for Mike Elko and company. Because you look at these home games, they got some tough ones for sure, but all your big-time opponents, you play at Kyle Field. Notre Dame to open the season with College game day in town, coming to your city. Texas Aggies, the messenger boards will be lighting up like a Christmas tree for that one. Missouri, you get them at the crib. They're going to be a preseason top 10 kind of team. LSU, College Station, and Texas. To finish the season, if I could pick one ticket to have preseason, that would be the one I would select, just so we're all on the same page here. But that will be phenomenal. All 4 of those games, in my opinion, from a roster level, will be the toughest test. But again, the good news, you get them in front of the home crowd, get that at your back, should be phenomenal. The roster, you bring back 72% production from last year's squad. That again, you went 7-6, but that 7-6 now, it's not the record you would have liked to have, clearly. But I don't think that records tell us the full story for A&M a season ago, because 6 of those losses, 4 were by 1 score. Now, you don't get credit for being close, but I do think it should give us a pretty good picture as to what Mike Elko is walking into his first year on the job in College Station. So the roster, something to work with there. A lot of pieces. We'll talk more about that in a second. The schedule, it's not impossible. There's some tough games, but it's not Takova's boots kind of tough. You got a lot of those tough games at the crib. Now, the thing that I think should be looked at when you look at A&M's schedule preseason, a lot of these games they have on the road are in some sneaky spots. Like they're at Florida with some life in them, that is, the Gators. I mean, that's going to be a game where Florida is trying to kind of figure out who they are early in the season. A lot of folks would say that Billy Napier is coaching for his job early in the season. That's a big swing game for them. They're going to get Florida's best shot at the Swamp. All bets are off when you go to the Swamp. They're at South Carolina, and South Carolina on paper doesn't probably present the most daunting task to A&M. We'll see what they are when they play them. But you play at South Carolina, which will be a tough place to play, and you play them the week after you play LSU. That, to me, neon sign, just big flashing lights, letdown spot. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying if I'm Mike Elko, we got to rally the troops, circle the wagons from probably a pretty draining game against LSU the week before. Got to make sure we're locked and focused, as Josh Newberg would say, clocked in and locked in when we play that game. And then you play at Auburn the week before. You have the rivalry of all rivalries returning for you in College Station before you play Texas. And Jordan-Hare, same thing I said about Willie B., same thing you could say about the Swamp, tough place to play. Some teams are just different when you get them at the crib, and Auburn has proven they are one of those teams. Just ask Georgia and ask Bama with how they played them last year when they had them in their house. Worth noting, no Bama, no Georgia, no Tennessee for A&M. So again, tough schedule of sorts, but it's not Takova's boots leather kind of tough. A&M in year 1 has some really good pieces. Connor Wegman, verdict is still out on the definition of what he's going to be, but I do believe he's a super talented quarterback, and I think in flashes he has shown you he is good enough to steer this ship where it's supposed to go. Now, how far he can take you, we're going to see, but I do think that you're not lacking anything physically with him from an arm talent perspective. Small sample size, but I feel pretty good about him being the guy for you in College Station. Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad, Both guys that I think are set to have really good years in 2024. They both averaged 12 yards a catch last season. With Anaya Smith gone, Evan Stewart gone, there's going to be some production to be made up for. Colin Klein now calling the offense. I think they're going to put Connor Wegman in position to be pretty successful and get the ball to playmakers in space. Worth noting, Reuben Owens, Le'Veon Moss. It's a solid backfield if you ask me. Le'Veon Moss had 5 yards a carry last season. Reuben Owens, a lot of people forget, is a top 3 back in the class of 2023. Flashed in the spring game in a major way. So the offense has got some pieces. Defensively, Torian York gets another year under his belt. He's a young buck, but linebacker that has the respect of that entire team. Then you went out to the portal and got the Big Ten's leader in sacks from a year ago from Purdue and Nick Scorton playing edge for you. So there's a lot of pieces. And I think the main sentiment I want to drive home here for Mike Elko in his first season, this is not a rebuild year. Like a rebuild to me implies that we don't have what we need to be successful. Mike Elko, you have pieces to be successful in year one. Now, what does success look like from our standpoint? We're going to see how it looks as we get further and further into the season. But preseason, I think year one is all about establishing who you are under Mike Elko. It's been said many times now for A&M. They've had a lot of talent in-house. They've recruited well in different cycles, but haven't really put it together. And to me, that looked like a lack of identity from a gameplay standpoint, whether it be scheme, whether it be culture. There was a lack of who is Texas A&M. Year one, I think Mike Elko brings that. I think he brings structure. I think he brings culture. Year one is all about establishing what that is and who they're going to be under Mike Elko. When you look at the win totals, I think 7-5 is off the table. If we go 7-5 and I'm an A&M fan, I am disappointed. I'm put out. 8-4, I think you are content with. Now, content and happy are different things. Content, I think you have to probably factor in some variables and factor in the eye test quite a bit. Like, do we look consistent from game to game? Do we get the same team against LSU that we get against Missouri, that we get against Florida when we go to the Swamp? Is there consistency? Because consistency to me is a culture thing. It's a coaching thing. It is making sure that standard internally is at the same exact spot week in and week out. And we push each other internally within that locker room and from that staff to meet that week in and week out. So consistency. And then also, how do you look against those big boys? Like, it's no secret right now as we sit here preseason, Notre Dame's got a pretty solid roster. Texas probably has one of the best rosters in the SEC. How do you stack up in those games? Do you play them tough? Heck, do you beat some of those teams? That's a big part of 8-4 to me. If they do go 8-4, again, you hit the under on that win total. But if you go 8-4 and that last win of the season, in the regular season that is a win over Texas, a rival you haven't seen on the gridiron since 2011, with Texas riding high their first year in the SEC, they just made the college football playoff. There's no secret. A&M, you didn't want Texas in the SEC. But if you were to beat them their first year in the conference and you do it at Kyle Field, who knows what's on the line for Texas that last week of the season? Could be to spoil their chances to go do something fun in the postseason. I'm just saying. I think that would make the 8-4 taste a little bit differently if you are going to get that 8th win against Texas. And then we'll talk about bowl games and stuff like that when it gets here. But 8-4 plus a bowl win, 9 wins, not a bad deal. Now, if you go 9-3, I think you go from being content to being happy. Because if you go 9-3, it means you likely beat one of these teams, whether it's Missouri, LSU, Texas, Notre Dame. You took down one of the big boys. You took down one of those schools that's probably going to be preseason top 10, depending on who you're talking about, top 15 if you're talking about LSU. That's a really solid win, gives you some momentum going into 2025, and really sets a tremendous trajectory for the future at Texas A&M, which is already strong. Also worth noting, if you go 9-3, that is already a better regular season win total than Jimbo Fisher ever had, not counting the COVID year. Because the COVID year was the COVID year, but you look at what he did before that, Jimbo Fisher's best regular season win total was 8-4. I'm not here to throw shade on Jimbo, but I'm saying if you got a coach that you just hired and he comes in his first season, goes 9-3, and tops what your previous coach had done in a regular setting, I think you feel pretty excited about the future. 8-4, I think you feel content. 9-3, I think you're happy. But again, let me know in the comment section what you would be happy with, what you'd be content with when it comes to a win-loss total for Texas A&M in 2024. Hey, keep it locked right here. We got full hour-long episodes of The Hard Count coming for you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 11 a.m. Eastern. We are live and live in color right here on the On3 YouTube channel. We're also on podcast for you if you're more of an audio person. Bottom line, however you consume your college football content, we got you covered, and we appreciate y'all being a part of this thing. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. I'm JD Picala. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.